Welcome aboard the Shipshape Podcast, your ultimate destination for marine wisdom and expertise. Our skilled crew, comprised of top-voting journalists and experts, is committed to delivering informative and captivating content week after week. We're eager to connect with and learn from our fellow mariners, and we encourage you to share our podcast with your friends. Remember, word of mouth is our lifeblood, and if you enjoy an episode, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. By doing so, you're helping us forge a robust community of mariners who can learn, collaborate, and exchange their experiences out on the water.
Today on the Shipshape Podcast, we are navigating the ever-evolving waters of the marine industry. Today, we're chatting a course through the electrifying world of marine energy. Our guest has journeyed from the cold landscapes of Sweden to the vibrant energy scene of Florida, always with an eye on the horizon of innovation. From his early days in the energy storage space to his current role at the forefront of renewable energy solutions for boating, he has been a beacon of progress and sustainability. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing the sales manager for Victron Energy in the US and Canada, a pioneer in marine energy solutions, Simon Ytterbom. Your two co-hosts today are Meryl Shred and Live Aboard on a Tashing Toshiba 36 in Boston, Massachusetts, and T.
Hey guys, welcome to the Shipshape Podcast. This is Talha Bhatti, and we're going to be learning a lot about new energy and old energy and how energy has transformed. So looking forward to speak with Simon.
So Simon, where are you coming to us from?
I'm coming to you from St. Augustine, Florida, Northeast, oldest established city, I should say, in the U.S.
So you're not originally from the U.S., you're from Sweden. So can you tell us kind of what the story was, how you ended up in the U.S. in the first place?
Yeah, I was 21. I was going to electrical engineering school in Sweden when I got an offer from a school in New York to go and take my bachelor in Brooklyn, New York. So I went over there and studied for a few years towards my bachelor. This was 2010. I moved over there. Along that journey, like many other people, I met a lady and kind of got, stuck here in this beautiful country, and been here in the U.S. ever since. After about 4 to 5 years in New York, we decided to move down to St. Augustine, where her family is from, and start our family. And that's also when I really started to get into the energy storage sector. My father-in-law was driving and running a small battery distribution company in Northeast Florida, and we were working with batteries and all the accessories around that. And that's really when I started to get involved with Victron. So I've been involved with it for 7-8 years now in one shape or another. Post that, I also worked in Sweden for a year and a half, almost 2 years, as the tech support for the Master Vault for the Scandinavian headquarter. And 4 years ago, I made the jump to start working for Victron as their sales manager here in the US.
So obviously you've been in the battery space for a while. And how have you seen it change over time? I understand that, batteries have evolved quite rapidly.
Yeah, it's a really interesting market, I would say, because there's been so much changes to it in the last 10 years. I'd say there's been more changes to the battery market in the last 10 than the previous 50. And traditionally, we were working predominantly with lead-acid batteries, flooded batteries. AGM and gel dry cells has always been an option in that space for quite some time, and it's been emerging more and more now in the last 5-10 years as a common product out there in the market for all its advantages. But lithium 5-6 years ago was a very expensive, it was a little bit cost prohibitive in the beginning, but it's really gained traction in the last 4 or 5 years that have propelled all the option of truly being off grid and be able to successfully be without alternative power sources where you can control it in a way that lead acid batteries are really restricting. And it's opened up this marine market right now, and for many other markets as well, to be completely energy independent and self-sustained. And that's really happened in the last 5 years with the push and the growth of lithium and many different lithium manufacturers coming out. Prices came down. They've really gotten the distribution out there in the world, and also, here in the US, to where it's now a very good product out there, easily obtained and not too difficult to get. You have a lot of people that knows about it. Knowledge is usually one of the main hurdles with this, and it's really propelling this market that we're seeing right now, which is super cool.
And Simon, obviously Victron is involved in just power generation. It doesn't care whether people generate that on a boat or in an RV or on land. What do you think the spread is like? Where is it being used the most nowadays?
I think here in the US, at least, there's a good mix between marine and an RV where you're seeing this, because they're very similar on the consumer side of what you're trying to achieve. If you have an RV, you want to be able to roam freely throughout the States and not having to rely on going to RV parks, and you want to be able to go places where you were not fully able to go. Same with the marine market. It's opened up the opportunity to really travel wherever you want to go without having the need to go back and always fill up a lot with fuel and so on and so forth. And I think we're just seeing the beginning of this market here evolve, especially as new electric propulsion in the marine market is coming across, and some of the challenges with that we're experiencing right now. It's very similar in that I still think the stationary market, houses and so on, is still not 100% there. It's growing very fast, but the cost for lithium system to back up your house and control your own energy that way is still usually a lot more expensive because it's so much bigger. So there's still some developments that needs to be done and priced to be justified, I guess, for that market to grow as fast as the marine and the RV market have done for this market.
And I'm glad you brought up electric propulsion. I mean, I think we'll do a deep dive into that, but how ready is Victron to embrace that?
We're kind of agnostic when we're talking about the systems that we're working with. One of the setbacks currently, I think, in general, is not really pertaining to Victron directly, is the recharge aspect of your battery bank. So if we look at cars right now, like EV cars, their battery banks are usually high voltage and or higher than what we're normally used in the marine world with. And to make the same thing on a vessel, it's more efficient, I guess, to have a higher voltage bank. But that comes with a lot of other obstacles, because the ways of recharging is kind of difficult, because now you have to charge at a higher voltage. You can't maybe use a 48 volt, or you don't have the alternator that can charge this, and now you're going through an inverter and then another battery charger to charge your bank, or you're running your generator to recharge your electric propulsion, which is kind of backwards in the purpose of doing it. And I think we're still seeing some of those challenges being worked on. So I think it's an emerging market too, where I suspect in the next 5-10 years, there will be a lot more readily available options that can tackle these obstacles.
As you had mentioned earlier, your family was in the battery business, and then you were in Mastervolt, and then you ended up in Victron. But I want to hear kind of what the shifts were, right? Like, what was it like to go from a family-run business to joining Mastervolt? And then what was the decision to join Victron? Can you kind of give us that story?
Yeah, and that's an interesting one for me, because starting out working with a family-owned company, obviously I have a lot of inputs and say in what you want to do. Your flexibility is rather endless, and it's a very liberating job role to be working in. Before I left the family company, or we actually sold the company to a bigger investment group, which now have a big investment group hierarchy coming into place, more structure, more managers, so on and so forth. And that really puts a strain on creativity, because you have to go through layers of managerial approvals, I guess, to create anything new, which tends to not be as inviting to work with. So I worked for the same company for a year before I started working with Victron, and that's one of the things that I truly love, and I think is one of the main things that sets Victron aside, is that it is still a family-owned company. We're about 100 people, now we're about 120 all over the world, so a very small company. And everyone that works for Victron have one sort of boss, and that's Matthijs and Reinout, the owners, and that breeds a very self-going environment that you can work in, because you're not gonna, well, for lack of better words, bug them with every little thing. So you have to operate very freely and openly, in a very similar manner to a family-owned company. Didn't really have that when I was working with Mastervolt in Sweden, because that's part of a bigger structure, and though we had quite a good amount of flexibility, it's not at all the same as Victron with the style that it's run right now today.
I didn't realize that Victron was only 100 employees. Wow. And you guys seem way bigger. You seem like, I don't know, Sony or something.
Yeah. Well, one of the core focuses for Victron Energy is to keep the team as small as possible, I would say, because that keeps us able to be quick in decisions. We don't have to go through a bunch of hierarchies to make decisions. If we want to do something or implement something new or develop something new, then we can do that very fast. Because if we think something is a good idea, well, we'll talk about it with the owners, and they think so too. We'll just do it. So we can be very fast in responding to market changes, which I think have served us well in the last 5 years here. But we're also very keen on outsourcing things that we're not experts on. We have 2 warehouses here in the US, one in California, one in Atlanta, but those are third-party warehouses. So we don't own them, we don't operate them, we don't employ people there. It's not our expertise to warehouse, so it's all outsourced. It's not our expertise to do invoicing and the admin aspect of it, so that is also outsourced. So it's just a smaller core of people that work directly for Victron. It's usually R&D and sales.
So maybe talk a little bit about the technology itself, because I've heard a lot of like Victron's transformers and stuff were game changers. Who comes up with that? Is it like a team, or is it just like the owner is, a Elon Musk type? Like, what's going on there?
I think it's a combination. I think to understand how we developed into what we are today, you kind of need to know the beginning of it as well. So Victron,
take us back.
Yeah, so Victron was really started in 1975 by a man named Reinout Vader. And he's still in the company today. He still goes in every day to work. He's doing a lot of the logistic ordering, all these kind of things. Back in 1975, he was down in the Mediterranean. He's from the Netherlands. That's where we're based out of. And he was exporting exotic fishes and sea creatures to the Netherlands to go to different aquariums and so on and so forth. So he was selling exotic fishes. So when you're taking them back from Italy or Greece or Spain, you need a way to keep the fish alive. And that's in an aquarium. It's a little pump and keep the water, running and all these kind of things. And quite often during that time, the inverter that he had bought at that point, some modified sine wave unit, I kept on breaking on him. And after losing some of his fishes, then he figured I can do this better. So he started building his own inverter, sort of a garage story. And in that time, it's also when color TVs were coming out, refrigerators on boats and so on. There was more of an electrical need in the marine space. And he started building his first units. They worked really well. And there was more people asking for it that was experienced the same issue, maybe not with keeping fish alive, but inverter obstacles at that given time with that technology that was available at that date. And from there on, it's grown quite fast. So Reinout is sort of the hardware guy in Victron that works with the transformer, the FET bridges, and the infrastructure of building a pure sine inverter. And from there on, we've grown to what we are today. And the company is currently managed by Matthijs Vader, who's his son, and he's more of a IT driven guy, a little bit more of the IT nerd in the company, and he's really propelled a lot of the software integrations, communication, and all the sort of infrastructures that you're seeing today with the remote monitoring, Bluetooth app, XYZ. And that's sort of where we are today. And it seems to be a very good combination, have the two of them working together.
And maybe tell us a little bit about the branding and the naming as well. Like, what was the inspiration behind even the colors? There's such a distinctive blue. Like, what was the story behind those?
I don't know the full story behind it, but it's very similar to, Dutch colors. And we're a Dutch company, so I would expect it's got something to do with that. And, blue for marine, because that's where we originated from. And, you have the orange, which is a very Dutch color as well, that type of orange. So I think it's grown from there.
And the name itself, Victron, does that mean something specific in Dutch Norwegian?
You'll have to erase this because I don't know that. I'll have to find that out.
Oops.
With your diverse background and experiences that you've had throughout this kind of sector of marine, what advice would you give someone that's thinking about pursuing a career in energy?
If I were to start, let's say, a little marine installer shop, I would look at the different brands that are the top notch and then reach out to them and just see if they have any apprentice, ambassador, or any kind of affiliation program that you can learn from them, because you'd be surprised how many companies that don't have good coverage on knowledgeable installers throughout the country. There's always holes. It's such a big map. And having energetic and passionate new installers come up, a lot of manufacturers are very eager to help you get going and providing you with good mentors or good people to build a sort of a social structure around what you're doing. So if let's say you're starting it in Florida, we would, pair you up with someone that's got a wealth of knowledge that you can work with so that you get a gateway into working with someone who's already gone through the very same journey that you've done. They could have spent 30 years getting to where they are right now. If you're smart and passionate and a outgoing person, you can very quickly absorb a lot of this already existing knowledge that took someone a very long time. So I think it's very important to find, not to sound cliche, but a good mentor or a distributor or of some sort that has gone through the very same journey, and then work with them for a year. You'll learn a lot more in 1 year working with them than you will ever do reading manuals and all these kind of things. You get that hands-on experience. And I would say there's a short of qualified marine installers out in the US. There's probably a lot of them, but not all of them knows power electronics. There's a lot of different, avenues to it. So I would really try to zoom in on someone, hopefully fairly local, that has done the very same journey that you've about to embark on, and pick their brain. So I think that would be the first thing that I would recommend. I think ABYC certification and going through that is a good benchmark, but then work with someone that knows a few different brands and can also give you some help to get to know some of the manufacturers.
Well, that's certainly a very true topic. We've seen throughout kind of the service side of the industry, obviously a ton of gaps within kind of where manufacturers have installers. And a lot of these young service businesses can really capitalize off it. One of our close friends, Lexi Ossinger from BoatRx, his whole plan was he just went out to Europe, run into these manufacturers who are making great products in Europe, but have no service installers or dealers in the US, and just making that connection. I mean, that's definitely a game changer.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Let me ask you, with the increasing popularity of electric boats coming into the industry, what challenges and opportunities do you see for the energy storage and charging infrastructure required?
Are you talking about electric propulsion already installed lithium system, or coming with a full off-grid system for your DC AC loads right from the manufacturer?
Both.
Both. Well, I think there's two different things. I think A is that I think that market is still going to, for the electric propulsion to come on the OEM side of things, I think that still weighs out because there's still challenges in making that a sustainable solution where you don't have to run a generator to recharge your battery bank, or that you have a sort of a radius of how far you can go before you have to go back, or having to have a backup alternator, a gas diesel alternator engine to take you where you need to go. So I think that is still some bit out there, and I think we're seeing some of the early testers now, coming up with different solutions for that. But as far as the OEMs installing, full-on systems directly from the factory, that is growing, and there's going to be a huge need on the marine installer side that understands all these systems, because as you know, if there's a product that comes out, there's also going to be a lot of service requests, upgrades that comes with it, to where it's going to be even more necessary for marine installers to understand this technology, because if it comes standard, it's going to be more and more in their face, as I would say, when they're out there, and they need to know about it, or they'll be behind on the progression of the market. And then the second aspect of that is, the more system that you have of this nature out on the water, the more people are also going to want to have it, because if every neighbor has got the ability to go off grid and do whatever they want to, well, then that's also something that you perhaps will start striving to eventually. So I think that the need for retrofit is just going to keep on going up with that, because there's so many boats, secondhand boats. Boats are sort of a vessel that age is not all that important on. You can buy an older boat and fix it up, but if you buy something with like an RV, then you tend to have a little bit of a timestamp on it before it gets really outdated. So I think boats are something that can go in generations, and there'll still be a lot of needs for upgrades and adjustments to tailor to the current market.
Ahoy, investors! Are you on the lookout for a unique opportunity to invest in a thriving industry? Set your sights on ShipShape, the innovative platform connecting boat and yacht owners with top-notch marine service providers. Our team is committed to revolutionizing the marine repair and refit market in North America. But we can't sail these seas alone. With your support, we can enhance our platform and create a significant impact in the industry. Don't let this exciting investment opportunity drift away. Contact us today to learn more about joining our voyage. Reach out to us at info@shipshape.pro.
Circling back a little bit, obviously it seems like there is a debate between the storage capacity of batteries or the ability of the power plants, whether it be like solar or wind. And so can you talk about those dimensions, whether it be battery storage or just kind of what the capacity of solar is these days in terms of being able to charge such things?
Yeah, and if you look at just on the solar panels and what have happened to that industry in the last 5-10 years, we've come a very long way, and I don't see any stop or end to it. What used to be, a 200 watt panel is now a 400 or 450 watt panel. The efficiency's gone from 10% to 25%. So the amount of energy that you can harness out of a solar panel has increased quite a lot, while the price has gone down tremendously, to where it's usually now a question of how much space do I have on my vessel to put up solar panels to do what I want to do. And you can then get, for what is today, a standard AC/DC consumption on the boat, you can, with a sizable PV array, live fairly comfortable on a sailboat, where 5-10 years ago you had to be very careful on how you managed all your loads and such when you were sailing. Because I think that's really opened up that market, and it just keeps on getting more and more efficient. The panels are getting, they're not getting any smaller, I would say, but at least not from what I gathered from the last events that I've been, but they're getting more powerful, I would say. And that really helps with being able to get, a more robust recharge option with with the PV array.
And Simon, I like speaking from personal experience. I remember when I got my panels, and I was telling you this off air, is that I literally had to hang on to them for 2 years because I couldn't find any electricians who dealt with boats, and I couldn't find any boaters who deal with solar. And how do we bridge that gap? You know, do you think? And again, this is a few years ago. Do you think it's better now? How do we improve it further?
I think it's a little bit better, but that kind of I would say network infrastructure comes from creative people finding ways to making good qualified installers known to the world, I would say. And then I think there's a lot of very good installers out there that is, if you don't have a connection with them some in one way or another, that you're not aware of, or you would not maybe find them. Because one of the things I would say with someone that is very good at the mechanical, electrical engineering of systems like this is that they tend to not be very creative and savvy when it comes to the company or the publicity of themselves,
sales and
websites.
marketing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's sort of on the very backbone and last thing that they're thinking about, because they're more in their mind thinking about which cable should go where and how do I do this and that, sort of operate in that space. And I think with the advent of AI and with some new things really pushing that social networking environment, that if you can get these people known to the world in a lack of better terms, I think that will really propel a lot of these issues where you're waiting, you don't know who to contact, who is good, and then hopefully there's manufacturers have their approved trainings, ABYC standards that can really put check boxes, I guess, on verifying that they are trained in the different professions to a certain level, so that there's some sort of benchmark for them to kind of quickly see that they know what you want to try to do with them. So I think that network is getting better and better, and if that keeps on developing, I think that will help quite a bit. But it's still a very underserved market as far as from the amount of knowledgeable installers out there.
And how is Victron dealing with that? Is there anything that you guys are doing to sort of specifically enhance that part, just the installers and the service side of it, perhaps?
Yeah, well, there's a few avenues that we have that we're working with this. We're constantly doing hands-on training, and it's the only way to get installers really comfortable with our products. So we've done hands-on trainings now for 2 years throughout the entire country for all the different markets, and that really helps to get a lot of the installers up to speed very quickly with the basis of a full lithium system. This is something we've been doing now for 2 years. It's still going on. We've got training now almost every week until December. And that helps that. During that training too, we're also looking for those guys that are very knowledgeable, so we can highlight them for the ones that knows Victron on our website, where to buy. We have an installer tab there that we're trying to continue to populate and try to get more people that we'd recognize out there to be known. But traditionally, what you would do if you find yourself in Minneapolis or Florida or wherever you're at, is that if you want to have a Victron system installed, you'd look and see who the distributor is in that area.
Mm-hmm.
You call them and they would recommend a good distributor that they know of in that area, because they have access to their entire fleet of installers. So yeah, we're trying to highlight individuals more, but it's still generally driven on our end through the distributors recommending one of their preferred installers.
Mm-hmm. And you've been doing this for a while. What are some of like the key milestones for Victron, or maybe some of the biggest sort of concerns they had, or inspirational challenges they had? Like, how has your journey evolved as Victron in the last few years?
Well, for us, making sure that the right people or the right knowledge is out there has been key, because there's so many videos out there on how to do this on YouTube and different platforms, and we've really tried to enhance that to where it's good, solid information that's out on the web, because that's usually where people get acquainted with our products the first, but we always try to push everyone that's looking for our products to go through a local distributor that have the knowledge already, and they can really then help if they have a marine installer on their own to really help that installer go through some of the obstacles with, wiring in a full system, because they're usually never the same. Yeah, so we've pushed quite hard with training. That's been one of our main focus, hands-on training. Yeah, get 4 or 5 guys in front of a system, have them wire it all up, do all the programming, all these things, get them to talk to each other, knowing each other, sharing knowledge, so on. And that's been one of the key focuses for Victron in the last 2-3 years, I'd say.
Can you share a success story or challenging situation?
Yeah, I think something that's interesting is that there seems to be 2 different styles of marine installers out there right now, where you have a younger generation that's usually pretty savvy with the communication, the small wires, the digital aspect of what a full lithium system may look like now, communication, monitoring, so on and so forth. But they may not have the sort of the experience that some of the older generation may have, where they can essentially go down and listen and say, you got a bad ground, that kind of feeling. And vice versa, the older generation may not have the inclination to be really successful without good training to do all the more technical advanced stuff on a system. And trying to merge that is really interesting. And we see that some of the best installers or installer groups comes out of the ones that have a combination of this, where they have a young apprentice that have this sort of knowledge. Sort of, you ask someone to fix your computer, you usually maybe presumptuous, but you're usually not asking your dad, you're asking your son to do it, kind of situation.
I've also found is that like people, like your electricians, some of them, the ones that deal with the 110 and the 220, are almost shy of the 12 volts. They're like, what? There's no ground? What does that mean? Yeah, and the other way is true as well. The people who are savvy with the 12s and the 24s are almost afraid of the 220s, and they're like, that's too many volts.
Yeah.
How do we bridge that gap?
I think it's just education, and when I think it's just, you got to get your hands dirty and start working with it, because it's sort of when you break through, because I've been through that very same journey, I would say, coming from an energy storage, very heavily DC sort of knowledge that I started with before I started working with Victron, and anything on the AC side was not unknown, but it was, that's the other side of this that I kind of understand, but not fully. And it's a lot more intimidating if you actually have to install it too and run the wires, and you're not feeling comfortable because you're working with high voltage. And the way to really break that through is just install some of it, get a system in your shop up, start playing around with it, try the a voltmeter, do different things. I think the ABYC basic course is a very good fundamental training for you to get more comfortable with all this and how to check different things and what to do to make sure a system is safe on the AC and DC side too. So if you're feeling unsecure about something on the AC or DC, I think taking that class will definitely put you on a good track, I'd say.
Well, we can certainly talk a ton on the issues and challenges faced by the service businesses. I mean, it's a very much the Wild West at this point. And we've dealt with a lot of manufacturers in which they're like, oh, yeah, we want to try to support the businesses and the service businesses and educate them. And on the flip side, you have a bunch of service businesses who, for the most part, you don't need to have any certifications to install stuff. And even back our story, me and T, we installed a 1,000 kilowatt solar panel on a FP sailboat, this 40-footer, and we just scrambled a bunch of people together, figured out how to install it. But
and it came out really nice. It looked like stock, by the way. Yeah. And the owner was happy, and he spent the whole summer in the Keys, and he didn't have to plug in even once. He was, on the moon. He's like, this was awesome. Best investment in years. Yeah.
And it went through a hurricane and everything. But that being said, I want to ask you kind of, because obviously some people outside of marine listen to this podcast, what are the key differences between, let's say, the automotive industry and the boating industry when it comes to energy, and what challenges are uniquely faced by marine. I mean, I can sit here and probably say that the fact that most boats, they're usually on open throttle, and so the power consumption is much higher than cars, but what else?
One of the key differences that I see, at least on the OEM side and on, the difference between the electrical systems on the marine and an RV platform and automotive, is that marine is really one of the driving forces behind robust and safe systems. There's a lot more, how should I say, not knowledge, but there's more standards out there, and a lot of things that you hear is marine graded, and that's obviously for, water resistance and such. But I'd say if you're working with marine standards in the RV industry, you're on the safe side, but the RV standards are still somewhat fluctuating. They're building up what's called the RVIA, which is the standard on their side, but there's still more to be added to that segment out right now. So I think the marine market is a lot more developed as far as robust installation guidance right now, which really helps that. But you obviously have some of the marine world is also quite a bit more challenging because you have, to work around galvanic isolation, you have water underneath the hull that can carry some current and those kind of aspects that is not at all in the RV industry that you also have to look at. So yeah, I think there's just, because of that, there's a lot more emphasis on safety in the marine than what it is on the RV right now, which really helps build up that sort of guidance in there.
I always thought that marine grade just meant that you spent more.
Sometimes probably. There's probably a combination in that, but generally marine grade means that there's a standard on the insulation, the type of material you're using, how many strands is in a wire, that kind of stuff. Is it engine protection, ignition, all these kind of things? Can it be where there's oil and all that kind of stuff? There's usually a lot of those kind of aspects that classify something as marine graded.
Well, I really want to talk on the topic of, this energy storage, because you post anywhere related to kind of green or electric, in always some of the first comments that come up are batteries aren't there yet. They don't have a lot of storage capacity, all this other type of stuff. Can you kind of talk on, that / what the future holds?
Yeah, and just on the lithium side, so we'll take this, 5 years ago, there's sort of a standard size for a lithium battery, and that size is now getting much, much smaller, I would say, with a lot of fast developments in the markets, and that really helps you get a lot more storage into what used to be occupied by big bulky batteries. So just for example, with Victron, a couple of years ago, I'd say, if you bought a 300 amp lithium battery, it'd be the size of, an 8D. And now we have a 330 amp battery that's almost the size of a Group 31 BCI standard. And that allows you to fit a lot more power into smaller spaces, because we know you're never given a lot of spaces on a boat or an RV. RVs are usually a little bit better with space and real estate than boats, but that allows you to pack quite a bit of power now that was not available over the counter just a few years ago. Essentially, you can put in 900 or almost 1,000 amps worth of 12 volt power, where you used to have a 200 something amp AGM battery. And you've more than quadrupled your energy. And that's not talking
and more energy. Usable capacity as well, exactly, right?
Correct. Yeah, correct. So I think as of today, there's sizes out there in the market on the lithium side that allows you to do pretty much what you need to do off grid. That was not there just a couple of years ago.
And then just adding to Meryl's question about the future, are you seeing more sort of OEM installs, or are you seeing more retrofit? Because like you said, like boats will last hundreds if not thousands of years. Are you going to see more retrofits on older boats? Like, how do you see this evolving?
I think both of them are going to grow probably about the same speed, because as the availability to information. There's more of a network of people knowing who's good at this, which means that there's going to be more people interested in doing it. It's such a blooming market, I would say, to be a marine installer that knows how to build these off-grid systems. I think that that's just going to keep on growing as prices may even come down a little bit more, or the ratio of income to the cost of the system is making it more worth the investment. So I think the aftermarket is just going to keep on growing for the next coming 10, 15 years. But also the OEMs are starting to pick up here, and there's more and more interest into building these systems there. Every year there's more boat manufacturers, coming on board, having a lithium upgrade option, so to speak, and they're coming through and doing trainings and everything to make sure they're doing it according to standards, but also to manufacturers' recommendations. So I think both of them are growing and will keep on growing quite fast in the coming years here.
Could you give us some names? Are there any companies that Victron is working on partnerships with?
Well, I don't know to what extent, but FP over in France we're working with. We got some catamarans coming out of South Africa, Leopard. Here in the US, working with one of the ones that are starting to do some really cool stuff is Island Packet Yachts. They're doing majority of their new boats coming out have a full Victron system. And it's really just like the marine installers. Do you have that guy in your manufacturing that is willing to spend the time to learn it, to listen? He's not too stubborn about what he's learned in the past and is willing to try and test and develop something like this, then they're the ones that are most successful with this.
Well, the fact that you just name dropped a decent amount of sailboats, would you say that there's more people in sailing that are kind of picking up these products, or is it kind of like equal with power boats to sailboats, or what's that look like?
In the marine industry, I think it's predominantly the cats and the sailboats that are driving this in transition, I'd say, to full off-grid systems, because you don't have the same need from power boats or bigger yachts where you have an engine running all the time and perhaps also running generators, but their alternators, if they upgrade their alternators, they can really produce a lot of power all the time anyway. And if that engine is on, then there's less need for this type of systems. I think where there's some quiet, I guess that's where this market is really pushing faster.
Just sort of building off that, how do these energy sort of efficiency considerations, do they play a role yet, maybe in the future, in terms of the design or the manufacturing of these boats themselves?
Yeah, because they have to sort of adhere to some of this, the specs of what is available there. So which means that they have to maybe retrofit some of their battery brackets, some of their ways that they're running their conduits and all these things. So yeah, they have
solar archers, perhaps. Right?
Exactly. Yeah, solar. Just places to put solar panels up, making it solar ready, or adding a PV array, which now was not really originally designed for their boats. So yeah, there's things that they have to adjust on their manufacturing sort of assembly line to make it all feasible, let's say.
Nice. And then maybe you can give us a little insight into what is Victron thinking over the next 5-10 years? Like, what are you guys working on?
We're continuing to push a lot on the communication of things. Our lithium batteries are getting smaller. Yeah, our components might be getting smaller. We're trying to make things easier, but that's sort of a natural trend of the market and what you can do with that product.
That's almost Moore's law at one level.
Yeah, exactly. But that is, I think, kind of true across the board in a way. But what Victron is focusing is more on the communication aspect of all this, more intelligent systems, more integration in between components, in between, one of the bigger, pusher in the marine industry right now is high output alternators. And,
I was going to ask, are you guys getting into that, into alternators?
No, and Victron is a small company for a reason, because we don't get into things that are outside of our focus, and alternator is not one of our focus, but we work with manufacturers, and we have our protocol available for them, so people can go and buy high output alternator, external regulators, and then we work with a Wake Speed or a Balmor or Arco, or there's a bunch of different ones out there, not to forget one, Electromax. They just having the communication from our system to tell the alternator how to behave and how to charge the batteries as fast as possible. That kind of communication is something that we're investing quite a lot of time and enabling systems to be high performance, because there's obstacles with that sort of infrastructure if you don't have CAN bus communication with it. I think that's something that's just going to get more and more readily available and easy to work with as we go along.
And as I mentioned off air, I'm a huge Victron fan. For me, one of the biggest game changers you guys make is a little gizmo. Is that intelligent, smart battery combiner gizmo? It's small. It's just like $40 or something, but you could connect a bunch of different battery banks to it. And that was just such a game changer because it was totally standalone, but yet it sort of, it enhanced the isolation of each of the battery banks, and yet everybody stays charged. But just that's on one side. I found like a lot of the older systems, again, not to throw these guys under the bus or anything, but like your Raymarines and like all of those navigation systems that sort of relied on NEMA, even now, it's like I try to connect a couple of them, and they'll say NEMA 2000, but they'll need like a new pin that you can't find anywhere to connect it. And how do you guys think about like the connection? How do you guys make it easier, especially again like with other products? Maybe again you can give us some names here. What other companies are still in there? I remember Xantrax was a big one. Does everybody talk to each other, or does Victron just talk to Victron? Or because I'm going off that smart battery combiner that it's agnostic to what batteries it's connected to. How's it looking?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, because you want to make it easy. The whole CAN bus infrastructure of communicating between different components that talk the same, but sometimes the different language even, or a different accent, I would say, I guess, can make, throw a loop in the whole system and make it really challenging for something so small. But we're working quite closely with a lot of the MFD manufacturers, Garmin, Raymarine, so on, and to make it as easy as possible for customers to connect this on their own. If you have one of our communication devices, it's called the Serbo GX, which is a communication hub that takes in all the different Victron components and then broadcasts everything out to the cloud, remote monitoring, local monitoring, that kind of stuff. But then all you're doing is running an RJ45 Ethernet cable to the back of the MFD, and then it auto-populates all this, and that's a straight RJ45 UTP cable that is a over-the-counter kind of product. It's not a special NEMA backbone kind of infrastructure. So then it's a plug and play, because those relationships are already developed, which makes it a lot easier for installers to get all their electrical information up on their helm, and that makes, hopefully those kind of things are of the past. But what makes it challenging, I would say, is when you start combining different brands that, for us, Victron, it makes little sense to have our batteries talk to Mastervolt's inverter, for example. That's, there's still a competitor to us. So that kind of relationship is not really, there to make those kind of different things work on the same platform. So you're usually looking at trying to stick with one brand within their offerings to make it a seamless integration.
Do the battery management systems talk to each other, or does that not happen either?
So that's one of the things where we work with a lot of different brands, because we have our lithium lineup, but that's not, we're not the best at, lithium systems perhaps across all markets. If you take a look at the stationary market, for example, then there's a lot of rack mount 48 volt lithium options, and they use CAN bus integration. So we've developed a integration with our Serbo and third-party battery manufacturers, so that they can easily connect a closed loop system to our inverter, so that if you have some of the third-party batteries, that you can just connect an Ethernet cable into our unit, and then that will take over the kind of the control and tell the inverters when to shut off and charge now and all these kind of things. So we have quite a long list of people or battery manufacturers that we work with for that very reason.
So we went super technical right now, but like Simon, what on a daily basis, like what excites you about working for Victron?
I'd say the freedom that every day is different. We work in so many or different markets, and there's so many different power needs out there. And we have, a really strong distribution channel, and there's always new markets that tends to pop up. Hey, we need remote monitoring for this little cell tower out in nowhere, and we want to power it. Or we have this little ice cream truck. We want to keep the ice cream cold so it doesn't melt. We have inefficient generators, so build a hybrid generator system. There's always something new coming on almost a daily basis, and all of them have some sort of similar solutions, big or small. Power is power, but all these different markets, we're not focused on just one specific market, and that keeps our job really interesting. You tend to learn a lot about different people's industries by helping them this way, so you get to know about all kinds of things, which I think is the one that is most fascinating for me to work with Victron, at least.
I like that. Every day is different, right? And power is power.
Yeah.
I like that.
yeah, it's just sort of the same but different.
Very cool. What about like this whole growth in like ecotourism and more sustainable boating experiences, and I mean not in just the boating industry, just in general. How are you guys embracing that trend?
I think it's a natural development of the offers or offerings that are out there now, because you can achieve a lot of these things quietly right now. It was sort of impossible 5-10 years ago, and that drives that whole infrastructure. And we always hear about new green incentives. You get a tax credit on, if you put it in a system into your house, and all the different things. And generally the systems are all the same, just bigger or smaller, but it definitely drives a good bit of not only the green sort of agenda to push that forward, but also the marketing efforts that involves it, that highlights these kind of options as well. So it comes from all different avenues, and it's really cool to see how many different ways people are utilizing power that they were not able to do 5-10 years ago, and just be quieter, less emission, all these kind of things.
So as we come to our conclusion here, maybe give another piece of advice outside of, find a mentor, and tell us where we can find you.
And I want to bug you, Simon, for a marine story. I know you've been on boats, so give us like your funnest marine adventure.
Well, I can kind of maybe tie the two into each other, because that's kind of how I learned a lot about the full off-grid systems and doing what I'm doing today. But about 5 or 6 years ago, I was working as a distributor in Jacksonville, Florida, and we were selling Victron products. And I had, this mentor. His name was Rick Steenerson. He was doing, lithium systems and solar systems on catamarans down in St. Augustine. And I'd quite frequently go down to him and just work with him on installations, because he had all the hands-on knowledge. He could look at a wire and say he had a hole in the installation 5 foot down into somewhere where you couldn't see it. Really nice. Sort of one of these guys, like these electrical wizards of old time. So I ended up going down and working with him quite a bit, because as you can imagine, he also lacked quite a bit on the communication and that aspect of the digitalization of these systems. So we worked together on a few boats, and I remember working on one particular one. We were installing, I think it was 1,000 amp hour lithium, this big PV array, and working with the alternator, and just spending time with him, working in the bilges, getting a feeling for all this, because I never really ran any wires or connecting anything. Really taught me a lot about the feeling of the products. And that's, when a mentor really comes into play, because not only do you feel like you're in a safe environment, but also you learn so much about the feeling of all these components. And you can say, yeah, this one is heavy when you're trying to get it on the bracket. That screw there, yeah, you have to kind of angle your Phillips head a little bit to get into it. Those kind of things that you can't learn
from tricks,
all the tricks in the books. Yeah. And so just working with someone like that and getting the experience and helping out, I think is invaluable. It was, at least for me, and it really, helped me sort of grow as a person too, because you get two avenues of your knowledge. If you're coming from the designer aspect of it and sitting behind a computer, you usually lack this, just like the old marine installer not being up to speed with all the IT aspects of it, and the young one maybe not with all the wires of every ground cable that's possible on a boat. And you get the same feeling if you work as a designer when you go out and run the installs the system. So yeah, it's really neat to have that kind of experience, I'd say.
And fun marine adventure.
Yeah, now I got 3 kids, and it's somewhat limited. But before all the kids and working here, we would go out diving a bit, and
Nice.
I've always been a found diver. It's been a few years since I was out and diving, but yeah, that's always been one of the main sort of
What's the
marine
craziest thing
aspects.
you've seen while you're diving?
Well, it was pretty cool. We were out diving off the coast in Palm Beach. This is 4 or 5 years ago, and we had this. We went out with a group and an instructor, and we went out on the water. It was kind of rough sea, and the 2 friends that I had with me, they both got seasick, so they couldn't go down. And the other guy that was with us too got seasick, so it was just me and the 2 instructors, and we just scrapped the scenic tour of the reef and just went down and shot some fish. And I thought that was really cool. And playing around, see what someone that's been diving for all his life would do down there. So that was really cool, and I came up with this experience about how the fish blew up and all these kind of things, and they were just sitting up there throwing up, and I was like, yeah, that's it made me feel good and bad, I guess. Yeah.
True.
So yeah, that was kind of a neat story for me, and not so much for my friends.
Yeah. Okay, so as Meryl was asking, where can people find out more about Victron and its products, and if they want to specifically get in touch with you, how do they do that?
So if you go to our website, we have a generic email, and there's a contact tab on victronenergy.com, and it's called Sales USA Canada at victronenergy.com, and it's linked to me and my 4 coworkers, Justin, Alan, Johan, and Rich, and we monitor that daily. So if they want to talk to me, just put attention Simon and send us an email. That's something we check every day. And for people that want to get more information from us, or starting to build a system, or is on the verge of doing maybe something a little bit more technical than what they've done in the past, I would strongly recommend the first thing to do is to check our website. And if you click on see here instructions and then training, then you can see all the sort of live hands-on trainings that we have going on in the US and Canada, and attend that, because that would really propel you with getting comfortable installing full-on system. That training is for a split phase 120/240, working with different input voltages, lithium battery, working with lithium battery relay, BMS signals, the whole integration of things, connecting it up to an MFD, so on and so forth. So that's really a good kickstart. But if not, and if that's not an option, send us an email, get connected with a good technical distributor that can help you with this, and maybe even find someone that you can work with, or just be your guiding force in the ever-changing electrical landscape of marine electronics, and take some of our online classes that we have on our website as well.
Okay, and as a final question for me, I'm a huge DIY guy. So, but in your opinion, what's that sort of threshold between, you can do this yourself, no, just go hire the pro? What's that point? Is it volts? Is it amp hours? Is it what level of complexity do you think people should just not try it themselves?
That's a hard one, because it varies so much between your experience in the past. And I would say if you have no experience at all, then I would strongly recommend calling a distributor up, pick their brain, see if what you're asking is actually real relevant questions. And then based on that, ask them, do you think I'm on the right path here? Because they'll tell you yes or no. And then that can be an indication of if you know what you're doing or not. But Yeah, that's a hard one because I think so many of our do-it-yourselfers are super technical and they know how to consume knowledge and they spend hours looking at systems online. But I think having that known Victron source, like a good distributor, and to verify the abundant amount of information that's available online is key to making sure that you don't make a mistake that other people didn't know that they did, or that whatever they did on their YouTube video or their forum or whatever that you read on is perhaps not pertain to your system. So I would say work with a good distributor and then know your own limits. If you're not sure about something, you're working 12 volt, 24, 48, 122, 4208, whatever it may be. If you feel like I'm not sure, stop, ask for help, understand it. Don't just push forward because you think you're right. Read up on it and then get back to it, I'd say.
Yeah, because it just gets more expensive once you start blowing stuff up, right?
Yeah, that's for sure. And but it's super cool because, if you're about to invest in a bigger system and you talk to, a lot of the distributors out there are super willing to share all this information and helping you if you're just asking for it. So ask for help. Ask for help with systems. They can recommend someone that can be your guide. There's maybe a system designer that you can hire for an hour or two to just verify everything that you've gone through and these kind of things. And essentially, you're paying consulting for a couple of $100. You're saving yourself days of just
thousands.
Research.
Exactly,
and all that, or buying the wrong one and getting stuck with something that you now need to buy something bigger. So
cool.
Well, Simon, it was a great talking to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been fun.
Yeah, nice. Looking forward to more Victron stuff. Keep up the good work, guys. Like we said, we're huge fans here already. And
Check back every Tuesday for our latest episode. And be sure to like, share and subscribe to shipshape.pro.